This is Trophy the Scoundrel's Quarter, Part 19. We are down 2 players, and so today we will be doing just a short little diversion with the 2 players that we do have. We were supposed to be doing Hearthfire next, but since we don't have the whole group, I'm going to just save Hearthfire for when we have the group. That said, Torum, you might need to lower your ruin from last time. So you can go ahead and do whatever ruin lowering spends you would do in order to
Yeah,
get
let me take a
ruin
look.
down.
Oh, geez, I didn't have any gold either. That's not a good start.
I hope you were prepared to meet your burdens.
I feel like I wasn't actually. I
you
have
have you have some treasures, not a
some
ton.
found treasure. Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
I have those 2 fiery ghost embers I can sell for a gold each.
yeah. Maybe do one of the free healings since that's free, and
Mm-hmm.
then if you want to just do that one and bring it down to 3, that's probably okay for this. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll have a chance to get more treasure today.
Okay.
Which of the free healing options do you want to do?
I'm just looking at that. Is that under household there?
It's under healing.
Oh, yes.
And do you have a household?
I do.
Oh,
I
if you
have
have a
the.
household, you would get to lower one for free anyway. So, but you can do
Okay.
that. We can do
Yeah.
that when we do Hearthfire. If you want to just do one of the
Oh no,
freebies for now.
I have a stash from my hoard. I do not have a household. I mix the 2 up. Um,
Oh, okay,
I'll go with the first of those healing options.
sure. Which says,
Narrate a scene showing how you satisfy your physical desires when in town.
hmm,
I think back in Fort Duran, we see Torum in a kind of eating house, an inn of some kind, and he is just wolfing down this enormous trencher of mixed foods, breads and meats and on skewers and all kinds of kind of vegetables prepared in interesting oils. And he's actually not a gourmand exactly, but just likes the volume. He's a big guy and likes to eat a lot. And then he goes from there, and we see him just putting his shoulder into work, like lifting up a broken gate post and holding, carrying large stones to repair a piece of wall where a tree has fallen from the forest. And yeah, that just exercising and stretching those muscles is a necessary thing for him. He kind of feels very cooped up and frustrated if he doesn't get to strain his strength against something regularly.
fantastic. So it has been. We're going to fast forward the clock. It's been a number of months since the events at Kermode Castle, and it's summer in Fort Duran. The days are hot and muggy, and there's a sort of just general lethargy that has set in over the fort. There hasn't been much treasure hunting going on. There are some groups that are out, but they haven't returned yet. They'll probably be traveling on the road in the fall when the weather is a little more pleasant for travel. And your group, Torum, recently down a member, but also up a member in a way with Alina. Down and up always. They everyone's kind of gone their separate ways for a time until new opportunities arise. And so I think, Torum, you have gone to Umbret, the capital city, to while away some time. maybe find some opportunities, maybe just to see Umbret, because it is a wonder of the world. It is a place of where the world comes together. It is a place of commerce. It is a spectacle and a good time in some ways. It's also a place of incredible wealth. We begin our story in the Salt District of Umbret. Our little side tale today is a mystery of salt and saints. And Torum, you've been in Umbret for a few days now, drinking, which is why you still have the mildly buzzed condition, and spending your money and basically living it up. You get lots of people asking questions like if your horns are part of some helmet that you're wearing. How do you handle those questions? Do you just pretend like they're real or they're not real or what? Or do you say they're real or do you pretend like they're not real?
I think he's kind of honest about it. If people ask specifically that, if it's part of his helmet, he'll pull the helmet off and reveal that the horns stay in place. And he's actually, because he previously had a helmet with horns on it, and he's actually had to adapt it. So he's, cut sections out of it so that it'll fit over his head and allow the horns to protrude through.
Beast bitten, cured or otherwise, are not welcome in the more civilized parts of Umbret, which is why you don't get to spend much time in, say, the Rose District or even the Paper District. And so you find yourself today in the Salt District, which is one of the more working class districts in Umbret. The Salt District, well, let's learn about it a little bit. Umbret, of course, is the thriving capital of kaleidoscopic faces and has lived and died 1,000 deaths. No matter its current dressing, though, the city has always pivoted about the Salt District. The people who cultivated the earth above early discovered ways to reach their hands below, scoring deeply, deeper than any one person can remember or fathom. And there they found salt, an essential mineral prized by kings and paupers alike. And indeed, salt is the underlying economic engine of Umbret. The Umbret mine is an exposed bone that the flesh of the city knits itself to, builds upon, rots off of, only to be reborn from again. It is the city's oldest center of trade. The district remembers some of its past, but most of it, for better or worse, has been forgotten. And yet on this day, Torum, the district is quiet, even desolate, you might say. There are not a lot of people around. The famous mine, which the entrance is right in the middle of the city, there's no workers coming in and out of it, as you would expect. You do see this other fellow, though, our new character, Berwin, who is also in Umbret. Why are you in Umbret, Berwin?
Well, I've been here a few months actually. And I think I just haven't left. I think I've just been not necessarily living it up because I don't have the wealth to obviously live in the Rose District, but I've been just sort of drifting from area to area and sort of settled on the Salt District. It's quaint. It's got a hominess to it. It's also affordable.
We'll meet you properly in a bit, but I would like to know just what you look like.
Yeah, so I'm much shorter than Torum. Kind of a gangly, pasty fellow, shock of red hair and a red beard, kind of greasy in places, not the most well kept. He's got a stiff wool cloak that's been dyed bright red, kind of like steely gray eyes. But otherwise, relatively unremarkable looking.
The Salt District has been this way for a few days, Berwin. You noticed the drop off and you've been hearing the rumors. Something happened in the mine. Something happened in the mine, and the miners, of which there are exactly 200. This is a number that is regulated by a local guild. The miners are not going down. Now, you've heard different things, and there's probably more to know, but one of your, well, a local that you've maybe made friends with is a saltmonger here. His name is Effiel Madrigant. He is actually quite a wealthy man. He employs hundreds of people in his network of salt trade. But curiously, he is very attached to his humble origins, and he has still his little stand that he set up many years ago to sell salt to tourists, even though it's not even remotely a significant part of his business anymore. But it's something he maintains for old time's sake. The stand itself is quite humble, and yet Effiel Mondragant is a very wealthy man. Let's paint the scene. Looking at Effiel, how do we know he's much wealthier than his humble salt stand would seem to imply?
As he's arranging his merchandise on his salt stand, we can see that all his fingers are actually decorated with quite opulent rings with precious metals and jewels and fairly ornate mountings for stones.
I think that he's got some tattoos on maybe the back of his neck, but the ink itself has this like iridescent quality that is only affordable for the very wealthy.
He says, "Hello, Berwin.
Oh, hello.
A fine, busy day here in the Salt District, as you can see."
That's sarcasm, isn't it?
Yes, that is indeed sarcasm. And then he kind of looks over and he's like, "My goodness, look at that big fellow over there." We see Torum walking across the lane.
Yes. It's quite a helmet, isn't it?
Those are rather impressive horns on that helmet. This man has almost a look of wildness about him. Terrifying, even. And not just because of his size. There's something ferocious in his aspect and his manner. He's the sort of fellow that I might have good use for.
Oh, and what sort of use?
Well, I have to get to the bottom of what's going on with the mine. This disruption from the miners is not the sort of thing that is good for business, especially in a business like mine, if you can imagine.
Yes, nasty work that is. Well, I hope you find somebody to talk to for you.
And he says, "Maybe you can help me out." And he calls over to you, Torum. "You there? Fancy some salt? We have all sorts of kinds. Rose salt,
You say?
table salt, fish brining salt, if that's your thing."
Do you have a simple block of salt I could carry with me?
Do you have a deer or horse, perhaps, that you are
No,
purchasing a little treat for?
but I myself enjoy partaking of a little salt when I drink.
You are my kind of man, friend. Well, let me show you what I've got here. And he's got a variety of salts in his little stand, various colors, and some of them are like quite fragrant, for salt. Floral notes in one. He grabs one sack and he's like, "Now this salt is very, very intriguing. Smell that. Doesn't it smell particularly clean and fresh? That's because, and he kind of goes on about salt. And he says, though I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to stay in business if we don't get this mine opened back up. Isn't that right, Berwin?
Berwin has just been looking up at Torum ever since he's been here. He's been off to the side, sort of clutching his amulet of the nine-pointed star, and he sort of keeps looking up, and like he's caught off guard when he hears his name called. He goes, "Oh, yes, I'm sorry. What did you say?"
The mine is not in
Oh, yes, yes, yes. The
operation.
mine, terrible
Yes.
business. Yes, yes.
Bad business,
What
I'm afraid.
What happened?
Oh, what happened indeed? Well, I don't know how much you know about the Salt District, friend. By the look of you, I can tell you're an outsider. And I mean no offense by saying that. Everyone's an outsider somewhere in their life, right? There are only 200 people licensed to be salt miners in the Salt District. This is something that the Guild is very, very particular about. And fully 50 of those men who were working that particular shift that they were on, they never came back from the mine. And now there's all sorts of rumors of, what happened to them. Is there a curse? Already for many months, there have been people speaking of things down in the mine, untoward things. And I think the disappearance of these miners was just enough. It was just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And now the miners refuse to go down in there, and all of the many parts of the economy for which the mine is the engine of have started to dry up. It is bad news. If only we could find out what really happened to those miners, dispel these awful rumors and hearsay.
Oh, they were lost in the mine.
Yes, yes. Well, they never returned. We don't know actually if they're lost. We don't know where they're at. We don't know what's going on. There's probably only one person who truly knows what's going on down in the mine. But no one is willing to go down and speak to her.
Down in the mine.
Yes, yes. There's a woman who lives in the mine. She is considered a saint by the locals. They call her Saint Sepulta. In truth, she is just a mad woman, no doubt, who has managed to scratch out a life underground. But the miners are all very superstitious when it comes to Saint Sepulta. They bring her things, offerings. I don't know how much you know about salt mining. I'm assuming not much by the look of you. You're not from around here. And as I've said before, but the miners, well, it's difficult work. Well paying. When they come back, their carts laden with salt, they have nothing but smiles on their faces, weary smiles, but smiles nonetheless, because there is good money in salt. They're paid well, their families are supported, but of course, all of this comes at a cost. You lose your back to the work, as is natural. And some say you lose your shadow to whatever forces, ancient and unspoken about, exist in the mind. That's all nonsense, of course. But perhaps most intriguingly and disturbingly, but completely explainable by science, is the fact that you lose your tongue. The salt, you see, in the air, it has an effect on the tongue. It dries the tongue out in a most, well, over time, in a rather tragic and horrible way, until it's nothing but just a flapping piece of thin leather inside. It makes speech near impossible. Well, this is where Saint Sepulta comes in. She is also known as Still Your Tongue, because She helps the miners with this unfortunate side effect of the work they do. She actually pays good money for their now useless tongues, which she carefully cuts from their mouths. We don't know what she does with them.
That sounds truly horrible.
Well, I suppose it just depends on the context and your perspective, right?
I should not like to lose my tongue.
Well, do not become a salt miner in Umbret. In any case, all of this is just to say that if anyone knows what happened to those miners, Saint Sepulta does. But we haven't even been able to convince the King's Guard to go down there to find out what truly happened, to find her, and to see what she knows. It sure would be nice if someone, two strong, strapping young men would be willing to just take a quick jaunt down into the mine to find out what happened, to talk to Saint Sepulta.
I'm sorry, too.
Wouldn't that be nice, Berwin?
And he sort of gestures up to Torm. He seems like two people in one.
But I have so much silver to give for anyone who might go down there and undertake this little reconnoiter. Surely you would like to have some of it.
Are you skilled in mining, friend?
Not particularly, no. I do use salt.
You don't need to do any mining at all. The mine is well trod and has plenty of walkways and tunnels, and it's all. You just have to find this so-called saint and see what she knows. Just discover what happened to the miners so that we can get past this nasty business.
If it really was so simple, you would surely go down there yourself.
I have a very bad back. It's terrible. I lift just a single sack of silver, and
I think
How much
Torm gives him.
To what?
Oh, sorry. Go on, Torm.
I was just saying, Torm kind of gives him a narrowed eyes, suspicious look.
Now,
speaking of sacks of silver, then how many sacks of silver would you be providing? Should we hypothetically go visit this sect?
Well, let's just say, if you were the sort of man who is currently betrothed to someone who, well, is accustomed to the finer things in this world, the amount of silver I would give you would put a nice little dent in the price of a present said betrothed would be interested in. I don't know if that has any meaning to you or not, Berwin.
You got me. Yes. Well, you do drive a hard bargain.
Perhaps we should tell our new friend, your little story, Berwin, why you need money so desperately.
Well, you see, I am, as you mentioned, betrothed. My wife is, well, she does have refined, exquisite taste, really. Demanding taste, if anything. And, well, I'm not really sure what she wants, but I know once I do, it's going to be very expensive to make.
Yes, indeed. Well,
you must be quite devoted to her.
In a way, yes. I haven't seen her for quite some time.
And why is that?
Well, she left.
Perhaps we shouldn't dwell on the details here, friends.
Of course not.
I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why someone might need a large sum of money, and Berwin's just happened to be very particular, and well, he leans into Torum, a little sad, but that's just between you and me.
I take your meaning.
So, I'm so happy the two of you have agreed to do this.
Well,
I
agree is a very strong word here. Uh, how much silver will be speaking roughly?
He brings out two hefty sacks. It's the equivalent of 2 gold for each of you.
Seems almost fair. I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
what, I will agree to it. Should you throw in another sack of your finest, cleanest, crystalline silver salt?
We have a deal.
Very good. He takes his hand or tries to take it.
And he comes around and puts his arm around both of you, one around Berwin, one around Torum. And he says, all right then. So, I have a person who can take you into the initial shafts of the mine, but you'll be on your own from there, I'm afraid.
very well. I find myself in need of silver myself.
Oh, don't we all, friend? Don't we all? I am happy
It's
to help.
it looks to me that you have a surfeit of silver.
I do have a fair amount of it, yes, yes. Well, I told you, the salt business is very good to us. Salt just gives and gives. People love it. Can't get enough of it. I can sell salt anywhere in the world.
But it takes your tongue. Well, not your tongue.
Oh, now come, friend. This isn't going to turn into some sort of argument about class consciousness, is it? Everyone does what they do to get by. Some of us are just a little better at what we do when we get by.
I think this is when like Berwin sort of like steps like out of them and like in between them. It's like, well, friends, I think that if we are agreeing to do this, we should get on our way. No,
Mm-hmm.
no need for philosophical or socio-political discussions here.
Yes, I agree completely. Now, I'll get my man to take you to the shaft. I can't imagine this will take very long, and you will have had the easiest payday of your life. I just need to know what happened to those miners. Simple.
Then let us be on our way.
And with
Yes.
that, he sends you with just a associate of his, somebody from the guild, who won't go very far in the mine. They're being very superstitious about the mine. But they take you to the entrance, and they don't know exactly where Saint Sepulta is. They've never seen her themselves, but they say a surefire way to find her is she leaves gifts of copper on the ground. And if you follow them, you'll eventually find the saint.
We follow the trail through the passageways of the mine.
Yes,
Trail of
well,
copper.
if they just say, if you see a copper penny or some other copper object on the ground, that means that you are on the right track to finding Saint Sepulta. That's what I've been told, anyway.
Well, we'll be on the lookout for copper then.
And this man leaves you. The mine, there's a. You basically have to take some stairs from the entrance down. And it's a series of tunnels. They don't branch too much, but they do branch here and there. And you have lanterns. And so I think we'll just pick up the scene with the two of you having gone down the stairs, beginning your way down the mines. You see evidence that this is a worked mine. There are handholds, and railings in parts of the path that are too narrow. There are barrels and crates of supplies and things for the miners whenever they have to spend a good amount of time down there. Salt makes the air smell particularly clean. There's a very crisp, clean smell down here.
I think we see Torum kind of taking slightly nervous, regular sips from his water skin because the story of the tongues is quite disturbing to him, so he wants to make sure he's well hydrated.
So I hope you don't mind my asking, and I truly am not trying to be rude. That helmet, though, the horns, they're not grafted on in the way that I've seen most helmets like that style forged. Is that something you got here, Umbret?
No, indeed. Torum reaches up and just pulls the helmet away via the crest, and the horns stay in place.
Berwyn takes a couple steps back. Well, I've heard of your kind before. You're not going to eat me, are you, down here in the dark?
You have no need to worry on that account.
Oh, fantastic.
I am no cannibal.
Yes, it's reassuring. Anyway, we should probably be on the lookout for copper. And when he says that, he'll sort of like go down to the ground and like start scoping it out.
Yeah, you have a set goal. There's just one set here, and the set goal is very straightforward, which is discover the truth of what happened to the miners. And Berwyn, you can go and do a hunt roll.
Okie doke. So I've got persistence as a skill. Can I justify that for a second die?
Persistence. Oh yeah, I think if you like take it really slow and you're like very like you're not like you're looking
like,
at every
I'm
crevice and every
like,
corner. Yeah.
Yeah, very that.
Yeah, go for it.
Thick light.
Very nice. Lucky you. You get a token, but also you find a little copper bell.
I ring it.
It doesn't make much of a sound. It's quite small, but there's a little tinkling sound.
It's a good omen. Yes,
Jerome? I know little of omens. What makes you think so?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I know little of omens. What makes you think this is one?
Well, it's copper, and it is a bell. Bells make noises. Perhaps by ringing it, and there's like a very clunky, very tiny, tinny sort of ring. Perhaps this will be a sign of things to come. Maybe the saint will hear us, even at this distance.
You think to make her seek us out?
Or maybe somewhere in the middle. Have you ever been in caverns like this before? Caves, underground dwellings, holes?
I have spent my share of time in such places. And you?
No, not as such. First time for everything, though.
I suppose that is true.
Torum, what are you doing?
Well, Bowen found some copper, but if we're supposed to be following a trail of it, there must be an indication, well, hopefully, some more further down one of the passageways, so I think he's trying to look in whatever directions there are for the glint of something in slightly further away so that we can start to get a sense of a trail.
Yeah, go ahead and make a hunt roll. If you have like a item that can maybe provide a light source to see the glints, that'd give you a second die.
Yeah, let me. I do have some torches actually.
That might help, but torch gives off more light than the little hand lanterns you have.
Yeah.
Go ahead and roll.
And I do have vigilance as a skill, which
I think all combined. Or the torch, I think, will give you the second die.
5.
Take your token, but you encounter something terrible. The terrible thing you encounter, you do see the glint. It's faint, it's small, but it stands out in these dark, salt-encrusted tunnels. It's a very, like, because of the salt content, it's a very dry space. There's not a lot of like glistening like walls and moisture. And so something that glints does stand out in the environment. And if you go closer, you see a copper coin, a penny on the ground. You're on the right track. Unfortunately, that copper penny has just apparently, or not just, but at some point tumbled out of an incredibly desiccated hand that is on the ground next to it.
Just a hand, it's not attached to an arm.
It is just a hand.
Oh, did you find anything?
Orin just turns and holds the hand up in front of Bowen. It is very dry, almost as if the salt has desiccated it. Do you think this may be the remains of one of the 200 miners?
Well, there's only about 50 that went missing.
Well, mummification does things to the body, makes it, I don't know, it could be very old.
Is there any sign of like what caused the hand to be detached from the body? Is it a clean cut? Is it like it's been pulled out and there's like a protruding bone or something?
Make another hunt roll.
I don't think I have any skill or equipment that would help here. So I'll just do the one die. 6.
Take your token. Indeed, the bone that the hand is attached to does not indicate that it was a clean cut. It is a jagged shard of bone, implying it was either ripped or broken, possibly snapped into.
This was not severed cleanly with a blade.
That's troublesome. Do you actually mind if I see it?
Be my guest.
And he takes it, but he's still kind of skeeved out by it, but he holds it. He looks at the palm, and as he's sort of tracing over the lines in the palm, I'm actually going to try and use my channel ritual. What I would like to do is get a sense of either what happened to this person or get a sense of direction. Whatever the spirit could use to help me.
Allow a spirit to act through you. That's very good. I like it. So this is a risk roll. Rob, what do we think could go wrong here?
I think rather than the spirit of whoever owned the hand, you inadvertently contact the spirit of whatever tore the hand off. And it maybe tries to lead you into danger rather than to an answer.
That's interesting. I like the idea of that, but also kind of like maybe you just attract the wrong spirit, just something you do not want to be running into right now. Let's talk dice. You have rituals as a skill, so you're good to go as far as that goes. If Rob has a devil's bargain, go for it. I will also put the Scoundrel's Quarter in danger as an option.
I mean, no matter what, the voice of the spirit will continue whispering to you long after you intended to finish speaking to it.
I'm gonna go with that. I like the spirit continuing to hound me.
You have 2 dice and 1 dark. Go for it.
6 light.
6 light. Very good. What does the channeling look like? Like, what does the magic look like?
So at first, it's just him tracing the lines in the palm with his middle finger, just sort of muttering to himself, looking very like focused. And it gets tedious probably for Torm just watching this tiny man doing this in the middle of the dark until finally his head just sort of goes back, his eyes go white, and he just starts muttering this like incantation over and over and over until finally his voice isn't his own anymore. And he just sort of goes back and looks at Torum, his eyes still white, his mouth just sort of gapes open.
I will speak as the spirit through you, Berwyn. Your eyes white. The hand actually begins to flex, sending desiccated clumps of salt-encrusted flesh sprinkling down to the ground. But eventually they form a pointing finger, pointing down not one of the main shafts that you've been walking in, but a hole that you would have to crawl on hands and knees to get through. And then a voice. She lies that way. Saint Sepulta, hold still your tongue. We angered her. We angered her because we said her real name. And then the spirit, the channeling ends.
What did it say?
It said that Saint Sepulta is this way. And that she was angry because whoever this was used her true name. This is an interesting ability you have, my friend. This divination.
It's less divination, more channeling. I'm an intercessor, so I've learned to contact spirits, negotiate with them, and communicate with them. Very helpful. I think they quite like it, really. They get lonely being dead and all. And sometimes they just like a nice warm place to cozy up inside.
I'm pleased to see that you seem to have some real ability in this regard and are not one of those tricksters that takes people's money with promises of speaking to the departed that they miss.
Oh yes, it's rather sordid, isn't it? I do like a tip here and there. I don't do what I do for money, though. It's just really something that fulfills my heart and sometimes my pocketbook.
So, this way then.
Yes. Will you be able to fit through that?
I think Gorham turns slowly to look. Will he be able to fit?
Yeah, it'll be a tight fit, but you might be able to You might be able to like army crawl your way through it.
I should be able to make my way, yes.
But if you don't mind, I'm going first. I don't want to get stuck behind you. And Berwin will sort of scuttle off down the hole.
Down the hole we go. It is tight going, and it's a descent for the most part, but it eventually levels out. It's incredibly claustrophobic. If there was even just a slight shift in the earth, the tunnel would crush you instantly. Nevertheless, you're making your way through. You have your little hand lanterns, which is much better in this tunnel than the lit torch. And just ahead, Berwin, in this tunnel that you're probably on hands and knees. Torm's on his belly for comfort. Up ahead, you can hear something else crawling in the tunnel, but crawling toward you. Your light hasn't reached it yet. You just hear, oh, 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 oh. What do you do?
I instantly regret going first. Yeah, he'll stop and he'll like try to motion back to Torum, and we'll go. Do you hear that?
And stops moving and listens. Yes. I have a nasty feeling we're about to meet the owner of this hand.
Dear. Yeah, I'll try to reach out my lamplight closer towards the sound to see if it's actually that.
Make a hunt roll with 2 dice.
I'm rolling like gangbusters today, baby. That's another 6.
Another 6. You see a man crawling toward you. His skin is encrusted with large chunks of salt. His eyes are so dried in the sockets that they're matte. You can see salt flecking from his hair like dandruff, but it's definitely salt. He's crawling toward you. His mouth is open, and you can see no tongue. What do you do?
But he's like alive. He's not like the missing hand.
You see both hands, yeah.
Yeah. God, I don't know. I try to back up into Torum, but realizing that he's big, I can't get anywhere.
Once this person in the tunnel is aware of you, they start crawling faster, more frantically. And now they're scrabbling toward you, and they're pawing at your hands, at your arm, trying to get hold of you, Berwin. What do you do?
I'm pawing at Torum to save me. Grabbing at him.
Torum's behind you in this tight
I know,
tunnel.
I know,
You can't
it's
do anything
horrible.
about it.
So now that it's in range and clinging to me, I'm gonna take out this little like very homey looking little heavy cudgel, and I'm just gonna try and thwack it on the head.
Nice, good. It's a combat that Torum has to watch, unless your weapon, Torum, has some kind of range on it.
Well, I noticed that Berwin is carrying a heavy crossbow. I don't know if that's something that I could kind of
Just take it and fire it from
take
behind.
from his back or whatever, and fire,
Please, by all
fire
means.
from behind him.
I'll let you join the combat then. But the problem is you can join the combat, but Berwin, you take all the hits because you're in front.
That's fair. That's fair.
So let's go ahead and talk about how you're vulnerable currently.
My weak point is 2, and I have a tongueless, salt-covered miner on me who's much stronger than me and will kill me.
Torum, you're actually not super vulnerable, but you're maybe vulnerable in the sense of like the awkwardness of the combat, maybe.
A 3.
A 3. Those are the bad numbers for you, Berwin. Let's have a combat 2. It's only a 6 endurance, so
10.
2 5s, very good. We'll start off, Berwin. Describe the combat to kick off.
I think that Erwin is hysterically screaming at this point. You know, he's used to spirits, but he's not used to whatever's happening in front of him, and so he's just wailing on it, trying to crack it in the head. I don't think he's very efficient in his hits. He's just sort of flailing wildly, and I think that's when Torum kind of comes in with clutch.
Yeah, Torum, finish it off.
I think, yeah, Torum is, at first he's trying to back up, but he realizes there's no possible way he can back up quick enough to now allow Bowen to escape. And then he notices the crossbow on Bowen's back, and he pulls at it, and Bowen is kind of frantically trying to flail this thing off him as Torum is slowly loading and cranking this thing, and it takes a good little while. And Bowen's getting ever more and more desperate, and finally Torum's able to bring this thing to bear, and there's just a loud twang and a thwack as the bolt just goes straight through this thing's head and like pins the head to the wall of the shaft.
Nice, good. Torum, you can go ahead and roll 6 gold.
One.
Not bad. It's odds, right? I think this person just has like a pouch of silver, their own personal money that they had in their life or whatever their previous life was. I don't. You can all.
I think Bowen being first can probably get to that before I could.
Yeah, I think that there's like Berwin's still screaming, and he's like still whacking at the corpse, but then sees the glint of the silver in the lantern and is like, "Oh," and just sort of picks up the sack.
Very good, very good. Also, you'll notice as his hand unfurls, he has a copper bell in his hand as well. Let's take a 5-minute break. You get through this tight tunnel, which opens up onto a shelf of rock, which itself overlooks a little nook, a little pocket in the cave that is illuminated by a lantern. A lantern near which sits a woman. She seems to be doing some mending, like sewing cloth or something. Knitting, perhaps. It's unclear from this distance. But even from the distance that you're at, in the lantern light, you can see that she's quite young. And she's humming a little tune. What do the two of you do?
Keeping my distance, but I am watching her. How big is the space that we're in? Like, can she see us or?
She can see you. She might be aware of you, but she's not like indicating as such. But probably the space is, there doesn't appear to be any other way out. This little tunnel appears to be the only way in to this little alcove. The cave roof is quite high, but it's actually a quite small, narrow space on the ground, and you're just overlooking it, maybe 10 feet up.
Norum, do you think that's Saint Sepultura? Sepulta? I've already forgotten her name.
Hello. Would you be Saint Sepulta?
She doesn't look up, but she says, "Yes, I'm called that, though in truth I am no saint."
We were attacked on our way here.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Did you see the man, if man he was, that came down this tunnel?
If he came towards you, then he had to have come from here.
That is my point.
You should come down here so we can speak more freely instead of hollering at each other.
I don't think we're hollering. And he'll look up at Torm, sort of just like nervous and unsure of whether or not we should actually go down there.
Torm will immediately start climbing down.
Oh, well, there we go. And Berwin will follow after, reluctantly.
You can see now that the woman is very beautiful. She has long, thick hair, very clear skin, bright eyes. She says, "Welcome to my home."
This is a curious place to make your home.
Well, I admit it's not much, but it serves well enough. I am an intensely private person.
Well, Saint, we appreciate the hospitality, despite the earlier confrontation. I assume that we won't be having to face any more of that, will we?
I assume that you've been sent here from the people on the surface to find out what happened to those missing men and women.
That is quite astute
manner
of
of
you.
speaking.
Yes.
Well, and she says, "I regret to say that I came to be at cross purposes with one of the miners. Most of the miners are quite agreeable folk because they have no tongues, you see, and so it's not often that we have disagreements or cross words for one another. I actually purchased their tongues. You can actually see she has on her belt a number of what looks like strips of dried leather or beef jerky. It is a
What was
service.
the nature of this disagreement?
Ah, yes. This miner in particular was young, new to the guild, like they all are at one point or another. I could hear him at the top of the mine shaft, even from down here. Over time, of course, over the matter of months, his tongue will start to dry and he'll lose the power of speech. This is the price that the miners pay for an otherwise quite lucrative job. And so I think this young man wanted to get as much use out of his power of speech as he could. And so I heard him. I heard him asking questions about me, getting no easy answers, or any answers, of course. But I could tell, even at my distance, that he was going to be trouble.
And so you punished all of the miners for his transgression.
Well, that is certainly cutting out several crucial steps in the tale. I have been an object of fascination for the miners for a number of years now. They believe me to have some sort of religious significance or power. In fact, I am merely a woman who likes to be alone and who has very particular tastes. But if they attribute good luck or blessings or any other sort of power to me, and if this makes their job easier, I certainly will not disabuse them of the notion. I will be their saint. But I'm getting into the weeds a bit. I do not like it when people think they know who I really am.
Of course, no one appreciates presumptions in that way. I'm sorry on behalf of those miners, or at least that miner. It's a terrible thing, unbecoming of men in their station.
We all have our secrets, and we have a right to them.
Yes, indeed. And so I won't ask you what your secrets are, because they are, as you've said, secrets that we have rights to. They're no one else's business.
Is the location of these 4950 miners a secret? Or is that something that we could share openly?
It wasn't that many. It was barely 24, if even that. They're quite lost, though, I'm afraid to report.
Lost where?
In the mines. They have gone astray.
Like the one we met in the tunnel.
Yes, like the one you met in the tunnel.
What did you do?
Surely you would hope them. I'm sorry, Torm, please.
What did you do to them?
And she crosses her hands. She sets down her sewing, her mending. She crosses her hands. And she says, I have spent many years watching the people of Ambaret, hearing their stories, drawing power from them as I'm able. I have even occasionally accepted grim offerings from the salt miners, not just tongues, but other things that I require from time to time. This young miner was determined to call me out. He spoke my name. He spoke my name. In song, a children's song I have not heard for many years. Out to find a treasure of gold, I dug up stones in the bitter cold. Still Mary held me in my sleep. I've naught to keep, I've naught to keep. Out to find our grub and brew, I gathered moss and morning dew. Still Mary laughed and kissed my brow. I've nothing now, I've nothing now. Out to find a wedding ring, I promised summer but died in spring. Still Mary cried and broke her heart. So sad we part, so sad we part. Out to find the weight of hope, I'd hung my head in a circled rope. Still Mary loved me, true and good, well as she could, long as she could. I regret I cannot let you leave this place. If you have any
But why?
wishes or words you would like for me to express to people on the surface, I will make sure they reach them. But your time is no more.
Surely we can. So we can. We don't need to resort to violence or anything of the sort.
I think as Berwin is babbling like that, Torm just draws his sword.
No, I said no violence, and I try to like step between both of them.
You start to hear from behind you in the tunnel. There are more of these salt-encrusted zombies crawling out of the tunnel in your direction. What do you do?
My lady, let's be reasonable here. We don't need to resort to anything rash. Same with you, Torm. Please.
You control these creatures.
They are hoping to please me, so that I might lift the curse I've placed upon them. They know that destroying you would please me very much right now.
I will not slay you.
Say that again, Rob.
Call them off, and I will not slay you.
You will not slay me in any case, friend. She says, she stands up, she says, I am as old as the salt in this earth. I am as old as the greatest oak, the first oak in the heart of the Caldur. I make my home in many places. Here, still your tongue, Saint Sepulta. This form is but one aspect of many. I am called the Witch of Nevask. And I will always be. And she stands up as these salt zombies are crawling out of the hole. And as she stands up, she sort of unfurls. Her limbs elongate, flop to the ground. They end in terrible talons. Her neck lengthens to a grotesque length. Her skin caves in to reveal jagged bone underneath. And her eyes are incredibly vividly green. And her teeth, she bears them. They are a multitude, and they are sharp. And she looms over the two of you as these men and women crawl into the space. And she says, do not be sad. You will have at least met your end at the hands of a legend. And this is combat.
Let's be reasonable. And with that, if I could do this before combat, I would like to cast a ritual.
Which
is circle. Because we are in an entire cave full of salt, circle, a creature within a ring of salt cannot inflict or suffer violence. So I would like to encase the witch as to not inflict violence upon us.
Very good. This is going to be a risk roll. What could go wrong here? Rob, any thoughts?
I'm trying to think of an interesting way that the circle could be or just this the ritual interprets the circle as like all the salt in the mine. So it's like it's not just the witch, it's everyone cannot inflict or suffer violence. The zombies, us, the witch.
Yeah, you become becomes this like white like pacifist sort of thing. I mean, I think it could just not work, and you have to battle these creatures. I like where you're going. I like where you're going with that, though, Rob.
Yeah, I like the like pacifist, like
yeah,
yeah. It's like a no PvP zone in a video game.
Yeah, precisely. Let's talk dice. You've got your first light die for rituals, Berwyn. I will put the Scoundrel's Quarter in danger as my devil's bargain.
I think no matter what the witch is, trouble is if we kill her, that doesn't make sense. I was thinking something along the lines of, the witch is fascinated with, or did vows revenge specifically upon you. But maybe that works because I don't know if we can actually defeat her in a true and permanent sense.
Yeah, I'll do the Scoundrel's Quarter.
Go ahead and roll Ruin. See how that goes.
Ruin or Risk?
It's Ruin for the Scoundrel's Quarter.
Oh, got it. 5.
Okay, so the Scoundrel's Quarter goes up to 3 Ruin now. So that we'll note that real quick. But you have your second light die, and you have to do a dark die as well. So go ahead and roll that.
5 light.
5 light. The complication is that she can't interfere in the combat. You have her bound, but you still have to fight zombies. If you want to add a dark die and try again, you can go for the whole thing. Or alternatively, Torum, you can do a help die as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a narrative justification for helping here, really.
So let's talk about how you at least bind her. What happens, Berwyn?
So when he says that, let's be reasonable. There's a moment where these veins of salts, like white, sort of flickering, sort of sparkles, shimmers, starts to erupt from it, and they sort of wrap around her, sort of like binding her in this sort of coalescing swirl of these white salt sparkles. And they don't like bind her like rope, but it just sort of like hovers around her body.
She says, rudimentary magic to be sure,
but effective
and clever enough. Not that it matters. They're going to tear you apart, and I shall enjoy watching it. And indeed, there is a group of them, probably about 6. Collectively, they're an endurance 10. Torum, how are you vulnerable?
I think it's a somewhat confined space, and we're pretty surrounded, or could easily become pretty surrounded. So
definitely,
just the odds are against us. Weak point is 1, though. That's pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah. What about you, Berwyn? How are you vulnerable?
So I mean, obviously, I'm trying to concentrate on keeping this ritual intact, and it's taking some of my focus away. So that's a weak point. Oh, that's combat 3. Sorry, weak point is 4. But I'm wondering though, just because I'm not super familiar with the rules, I do have my crossbow, and I know that with range you can like lower the endurance.
Yeah,
so I would like to do that.
Let me look at the. I always have to remind myself the rules of this because we changed the way this works like 50 times before we finally settled on it, and I can't remember what we settled on. So give me just a moment. Here, let's find this. Combat. Okay, here we go. Ranged weapons can be treated as any other weapon. However, ranged weapons may be used to reduce a monster's endurance by putting your ammunition at risk. You make a risk roll to reduce the endurance as normal, but instead of devil's bargains, you add a light die for each unmarked slot of ammunition you are willing to risk. So you've got. Do you have a skill that will help you with the ranged combat?
I'm quite charming.
I'm not sure that's going to work.
Yeah, totally. No, I was thinking crafting. I could put some salt, take some salt, and quickly like bind it to one of the arrowheads to like fire it off.
What
Sort
are
of
you
like
thinking? This?
blessed,
Oh, I see.
like blessed salt, but crafting it using my crafting skill as part of that.
I don't know if you have that kind of time.
Yeah.
I think just, I think just basically whatever light dice you're willing to risk for ammunition, 1, 2, or 3.
All right. I'll do one right now.
Okay, so go ahead and roll just a
And it's
single light
just
die.
okay. It's a 6.
Okay, so um, for each light die that comes up 1, 2, or 3, you mark one of your ammunitions. But the endurance is reduced, and it reduces it by 1 for this. Okay, so so they're 9 now. And how are you vulnerable? What's your weak point?
My weak point is 4, and I'm vulnerable because I've got my
Oh, you're
attention on the spell.
concentrating. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so combat 2. Go ahead and roll that, Torum. Looking for a 9.
9.
9. There we go. 4 is one of the. It's a 5 and a 4. So Berwin, you get hit, but you do destroy these things. So let's just kick off. Like Berwin, what does this start like?
As I'm trying to like reason with the witch, I see the zombies sort of crawling up towards us, and I fire off, and I fire the first one into the eye of one of them, kind of slings back and keeps sort of moving forward towards Torum. But what I don't know is that there's another zombie off to the side and kind of reaches out, and grabs me by the hair. And instinctively, I just grabbed my 7-pointed star amulet, and there's this eruption of 9 rays of golden light that sort of just surround and illuminate the chamber and blow back the zombie off of me.
Nice. Torum, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Torum he was preparing to attack the witch, but then when Bowen trapped her with his ritual, he instead turns to the zombies, and I think he just starts laying about him left and right with this huge sword that most people would carry in 2 hands, but he wields in 1. And the zombies are so desiccated that they are actually quite fragile in a way. So he even a fairly ill-aimed cut can like just split them in half, and there's just a cloud before long of kind of salt dust everywhere, and just the groaning and moaning of these things, and by the end of it, Torum is just kind of caked in this white dust, and there's bits of desiccated miner lying all over the place.
I love it. Berwin, go ahead and roll gold 9.
1.
So there's that one there, and then you can also take any hunt tokens you have collected so far. You can also make that into gold or silver that was found on these miners and add it to your gold score. And we conclude this little scenario with the Witch of Navask, or this creature claiming to be the Witch of Navask. She says, "I will leave this place. I will trouble Amberet no more for a time. But know that you have made an enemy of myth itself." And she just disappears, fades away. What do you tell? What do you tell the Saltmonger to get paid?
I think I bring up the hand, that I didn't let go of. Well, the funny thing about that is the saint who was living down there, well, she was not much of a saint. She was not forthcoming about the whereabouts of the other miners. We'll still have to figure that out at some point. I'm sure you'll find good men to do that, and women, and others. But I think we did it, right? And he'll look to Torm, sort of hoping he'll sort of chime in and support the story.
Do you tell them everything? Like they turned into undead creatures, or?
Yeah, I think between this desiccated hand and there's just the powder caked state of Torum, it's he'll back up Bowen's story that she did something to them. She took their tongues and their spirits.
Effiel says, I believe you. I believe you, certainly. I know that Saint Sepulta is no saint, that she is not what she claims to be. I know that over the years the miners have brought her untoward offerings that she has demanded. And yet, she is a fundamental part of their belief system. I can't take that away from them. And so, we're going to tell everyone that there was a cave-in. You managed to find the bodies, and this is evidence of the cave-in. Indeed, it was Saint Sepulta who led you to the cave-in, that led you to where the miners' bodies were buried forever. There will be funerals, there will be remembrances, the temples will burn much incense in their honor. And most importantly, the mine will reopen. I thank you for your efforts. And he hands you the sacks of silver.
And the sack of salt.
And the sack of salt as well.
Very good.
So you get the 2 gold, any gold you found in there, plus whatever your tokens were. So it was probably a pretty good little score for the 2 of you, all things told. And that will conclude our little Salts and Saints side adventure. Let's just go to Stars and Wishes.
Well, Star for pulling this out of the bag at the last minute with when
Quite
we
last
had
minute.
2 cancellations at the early in the morning. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Bowen, who has very different personality to Malkuth. He's this kind of talkative, attempting to get himself out of, protect himself with this kind of shield of words almost. And his rituals are also interesting. So it seems like there's a lot of potential to that character, and to understand what an intercessor really means. It's going to be an interesting journey. I really liked the kind of creative adaptation of the rules for the combat in the tunnel, where we both rolled the weak point, but Bowen was the only one that was vulnerable to those things. That's a cool demonstration of how you can kind of flex the system a little bit to adapt to that kind of scenario. Yeah, and it was I'll be curious if there are any if the seed of this encounter with Still Mary or whatever she was will bear fruit somewhere down the line.
Yeah, this is super fun. And again, thank you for pulling it out last minute. I know that we early on there was a hint of this kind of dropped with Malkuth.
Malkuth's friend, yeah.
Yeah. And so part of me wished that Malkuth had gotten experience, but I really liked this dynamic between Torum and Berwyn. And yeah, super creepy. Loved the combat in the tunnel. Like Rob mentioned, the sort of flexibility with the rules, and never felt like you were undermining the rules at all. Like to fit it, it felt just very natural, which I really appreciated. I really appreciated rolling as well as we did tonight, because just the two of us could have been a little spicier. But yeah, no, I'm excited to. My wish is to obviously get to meet the others. I'm excited to meet the other two. Excited to sort of get more into who Berwyn is. He's obviously very different from Malkuth, and I'm looking forward to getting to sit in this energy for a little bit, because Malkuth was kind of depressing. But and then I also have another wish for future games, because right now it's 3 new characters and 1 old, and the 3 of us have not experienced any omens, and so I'd like to pick up some omens so that we have those to kind of like fall back on again.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I did put this together pretty quickly, though it was definitely like Jack said, I was calling back to that little sort of tangent in Malkuth's story that never went anywhere or never got followed up on. I always thought that it would at some point, but now that Malkuth's gone, this still felt like a good time to or this, because maybe because he's gone, it felt like a good time to sort of go back to that little story about the salt mine. And so I was happy we got to do that. And it was short and sweet, but I think it was fun for what it was. And yeah, it was really good. I'm enjoying Berwyn already. Berwyn's a fun, high-strung character. And yeah, and I actually really enjoyed how Torum availed himself in this adventure, like just kind of, there was an assertiveness that I thought was really fun to see on Torum's part. And yeah, it was just good little jaunt. I don't think I have anything else though. Are there any other stars and wishes?
I just thought of something and now my mind's gone blank again. But oh yeah, I was just going to say that I found this kind of 2-player dynamic kind of fun. That I didn't feel like I was kind of potentially hogging the spotlight too much. Like I wouldn't miss, I missed having the other 2 with us, but it actually, in some ways, was pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
2 players is a fun dynamic. It has like it has an intimacy, right, that you kind of don't get with bigger groups. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think with the dynamic that the 2 of us had, like just a very large, big man and this not so big Weasley kind of dude, it was fun.
In a very intimate space too, right? Like,
yeah,
which is kind of fun as well. Fantastic. Well, we will pick up next week with the rest of the group for part 20 of Scoundrel's Quarter. It's hard to believe we've already gone that far. But for now, we'll wave goodbye to everybody.